Martin Silvertant has asked me, is knowledge acquired empirically or rationally? Martin, as you know, this is pretty much all I ever write about, is ontology and epistemology and their relationship. Empiricism is a really difficult thing to define because the word which I point out all the time that we get empiricism from is empirikos, which is Greek for experience. So what does that mean when we say that our philosophy is based on experience and that that experience conveys truth? What are we saying? How is that experience experienced? Phenomenology is fascinating like this because it's not testable in any way. When we take an empirical view of the world, it's very difficult to separate that from a naive realism, saying the way that I perceive things is the way things are. The picture of reality that I perceive is reality. It must be. Knowledge is experienced directly that way. What is thought then, and how especially does incongruence arise? How do we doubt if what allows us to doubt is itself self-evident? Empirikos, experience. The world is as I experience it. That is my wisdom, my philosophy, my love of that wisdom based on my experience. It sounds really weak when put in those terms, I think. You experience me now as a video. I am a video. I must be a video. There is no other way to perceive me except as a video. That's empirical. I know I'm mocking it, but the essence of the philosophy is that experience allows the world to be defined by the world. Is that correct? Well, if it is, we can't really ask if it's correct or not, because correctness is that. Correctness must be experienced. I don't think so. I get stuff wrong. I get a lot of stuff wrong. How do I know that I get stuff wrong? There's the twist of the knife. I wrote a song about twisting the knife this way. It's called Consider This. Sorry, and Bittersweet. No, Bittersweet. Sorry, wrong song. Don't even know my own damn songs. Anyway, I'll link it in this video. So the point of the matter being that if empiricism, if empirical evidence is what reveals truth, there's no truth to reveal, there's only truth, and we experience it directly. It kind of does away with the need for thought. It invalidates thought because there's nothing to think about except what has happened. And what has happened is the thought. So we can't challenge that. It must be right. Rationalism is almost the opposite. I like to define rationalism in terms of ratio. What are you going to use as your denominator? What are you going to use to divide this up? Rationalism allows us to make algorithms, to come up with mechanisms of decision making which lead logically, that have necessary results according to the rules that we follow from the axioms that we established to start with. So rationalism allows us to take observations and sort them. So it challenges this idea that the world is self-evident. Rationalism, which is what the scientific method is based on, says take an observation and compare it. Try and create a picture. Rationalism is the basis of picture theory. Try and form a model according to logical rules, which itself becomes a representation that indicates reality. I like this. I really like rationalism, but It's got to start from somewhere, right? You can't, as I just say the same thing too many times, but it seems to never be said enough. Logic doesn't produce logic in any way. It can't. You can't make a constellation by drawing lines in the sky. There are data points there which we then make connections between. There are things in the world which we identify isomorphisms, similarities, synonyms that let us define them. So rationalism is a method of looking at points and drawing lines between them such that we can divide the world. Us and them. Truth and falsity. How did we draw that line? Empirically? Well, we must start from some experience in order to draw those lines. But the lines don't draw themselves. Logic does not validate logic. And no rationalism is rational. It can't be. Things can't explain themselves. We explain them to ourselves. And that's what rationalism is, in a sense. It's taking what you can perceive and challenging that by the other things that you can perceive, such that a synthesis arises from that dialectic. Where do you start? And what started it? Billy Joel puts it best. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning. Bullshit. That can't be right. Fires don't start themselves. Thermodynamics doesn't work like that. The only thing that we know about the universe, the only thing that we can say with absolute certainty, is that stuff changes. So if stuff always changes, we can't say that a process is absolute, because that process must be in flux itself. This is the critical thing about the scientific method, is that science doesn't define science. Science doesn't say science says. Science can't say that. If science is a process, which it is, that process cannot produce its origin. Either it is literally invariant, it is the same over and over and over and over and over, such that it is an identity that cannot be challenged again. Or it's something that actually started and evolved. So it can't start itself if it evolves. That's not how change works. You must logically, in order to create an argument, in order to establish any line of reasoning that represents rationality, you must start from somewhere. Otherwise, all you have is silence. If this is the beginning of my argument, then either my argument is ignorance, drawn from a beginning that it cannot possibly have according to itself, or that nothing is something. That's the problem with empirical rationalism. It must be true. Our experience must inform our rationality. There is no other way. We must derive our axioms, in some sense, from what we experience, because all we know is what we experience. However, rationality, the application of logic that actually challenges the absoluteness of that experience, must also be true. Otherwise, we cannot know what we know, and we sure as hell can't know what we don't know. This is Fitch's paradox of knowability, a really impressive logical result in philosophy that says, if all truths can be known empirically, if we can actually discover the world by science, if we can eventually have a picture of reality that is reality, if the Enlightenment really is going to make us fully enlightened, then we know everything already. If you know the formula for a fractal, you know the whole thing. So if our rationality, if our logic, if Platonism is right, and we can perceive truth by thinking, then we already know everything. We create this cognitive theoretic model of the universe, which is the universe itself. If rationalism is correct, if empiricism is correct, then we have no need for rationalism. Why? There's nothing to challenge. Everything is the way it is. That's our experience. It's evident. It is clear. It comes through the window unobstructed. That's what evidence means. So, is knowledge acquired empirically or rationally? Ironically, both. And neither.